Well, no upside other than higher median household income, less poverty, less reliance on public assistance, lower unemployment, and safer communities, all of which seem pretty much on the upside from my point of view. Mr. Duke, what effect did the big, beautiful bill, as Trump called it, have on debt over the 10-year budget window?
CBO shows that it adds $4.7 trillion to the deficit.
That's a pretty whopping sum.
It's
for
enormous.
one piece of legislation. And over 30 years?
It comes to $30 trillion.
Wow.
With a T. Yeah.
What's our national debt right now?
As a share of GDP, it's around 100%.
And that's about $30 trillion. Yeah. So another $30 trillion. But if interest rates are 1% higher, how much more does that add to the debt?
I can't believe I'm saying these numbers because they sound like they're from Star Trek, but $50 trillion.
Yeah, $50 trillion. Well, thanks a lot, folks, for passing a bill that's going to add $30 to $50 trillion to our national debt, suppressing our investments in healthcare, housing, education, public safety, transportation, all important things for the welfare of America. And Mr. Duke, how did that bill affect the size of the working age population?
Yeah, so basically the combination of that, so first that bill funded ICE a lot, as you showed. And CBO says that it is going to shrink the number of people who are in the workforce because they are going to leave the country or be in detention camps. That directly shrinks our tax base.
Okay, so that has an overall effect on the GDP of our nation.
Fewer working people means a smaller GDP.
Okay. Mr. Beer, in states or cities that have policies, referred to as sanctuary policies, but more accurately, that dedicate local police to doing local police work, does those locations fully cooperate in detaining somebody when there's a judicial warrant for them?
Yes, absolutely. They turn over anyone subject to a criminal matter upon notice by the federal government that they have a warrant.
So those jurisdictions have entered into the FBI federal database, fingerprints, arrest record, what that person's being detained for, how long they're being sentenced. Federal government has all that information.
Exactly, yes. So they could go and get those individuals anytime they want. And in this case in Virginia, for example, the Laken-Riley Act, which they all supported, directed the Department of Homeland Security to get those people. And instead of getting those people, they're out on the streets profiling random Hispanic workers going to their jobs. So it's a total misdirection to blame the county when the Department of Homeland Security isn't even following the law that they passed.
Why not? Since they could get that warrant and pick up those individuals who have created violent crimes.
Because the White House has created an arrest quota. That's the only metric for success for them. How many arrests can you make today? And the fastest way to make arrests is indiscriminate raids, indiscriminate profiling of people on the street. That's what's led to this huge jump in the number of people and the, frankly, chaos that we're seeing in cities across the country.
So there was a chart in your longer written testimony showing that only 5% of the individuals booked by ICE have ever had a violent criminal conviction.
Yeah, and not only that, if you look at my written testimony as well, I talk about how the Department of Homeland Security has its own internal threat assessment that they assign to each individual who comes into their custody. And those people have to prioritize. They actually have a mandate. They can't be all political. They have to figure out who is actually a threat. And of those people, only 10% received the highest threat level, and 70% were deemed by the Department of Homeland Security to not be a threat at all.
So how does that match the campaign rhetoric about we're going to go after the worst of the worst, which I think 100% of Americans supported the idea that anyone who had created a violent crime should be investigated, should be prosecuted, should be, if convicted and incarcerated, should be deported. But those numbers don't match that.
Great campaign messaging, great messaging for a $200 million ad campaign by the DHS secretary, not based in reality at all. On day one of this administration, they rescinded all policies that forced ICE to focus on violent offenders and people with criminal convictions.
So they did the exact opposite of what they told the citizens they were going to do during the campaign.
It was a lie, just like it was a lie about all the things they said about Renee Good and Alex Preddy and all the other people that they've killed over the last year.
And you recommend, do I have time for a last question? My time has expired. You recommend in your testimony that there be a private right of action when individuals' civil rights are violated. Now, my understanding is that if local police or state police violate your civil rights, you have a cause of action against that. Is that correct?
Yeah, under Title 42, Section 1983, there's a private right of action against state and local, but not against the feds. And this is a critically important issue because right now they're recruiting all these state and local officers into essentially the ICE framework, which gives them immunity against all constitutional violations that they carry out while working in conjunction with the federal government. So we need to expand that to cover federal officers as well to make sure we don't have this immunity creep into every police department in America, which is their goal, including through this bill that we're talking about today.
So when the vice president said ICE agents have absolute immunity in violating people's civil rights, he was right.
Effectively, yes. Right now, as the law stands.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.